Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc. He's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Sean Thompson. And this is the Sean Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue.
Mafia economies in Democrat areas do not work. I used to laugh every time I would hear of some socialist scheme or when Barack Obama would use the word affordable. That's fracking funny. But I used to be in the private sector. We had a little tell. We would just fade anything Jim Cramer said. And then comes the Heritage Foundation. I started listening to all these guys at the Heritage. Young, all well-dressed. Boy, oh boy, they were spot on when it came to fundamental economics. And sure enough, here we are, fast forward 30 years. And look at all the experts today who are Democrats. They said the market would collapse. Oil would almost be as high as it was under Joe Biden. I said, bull done. Bull done. Buy the market. Buy any break you can. Trump is the president. As far as oil, he just said double production. So sell oil. But I'm silly. I'm an old fundamental trader. When I want to be well-dressed, I actually look in my closet and say, is this E.J. Antoni approved? Handsome as Vincent Price. Smart as Milton Friedman. He's E.J. Antoni.
Sean, every single week. I don't know how you do it with these intros. It's incredible.
Yes,
You're the man.
Thank you very much.
That's all I can say. You are the man.
I was actually we were taking a ride. I said, let me take a ride on Saturday. We had the family, right? So going in my closet, I said, what would E.J. Antoni wear out of this selection? Because you do it every week, too. When you're on Stuart Varney or you're on Charles Payne, I don't ever see you in the same outfit. And you don't sink low enough to make Charles Payne feel good about wearing sneakers either. You never wear sneakers with a suit.
Nope, that's a bridge too far for me. There's a few boundaries I'm willing to push, but that's just not one of them. I can't help it. I just can't. I can't bring myself to do it.
It's ridiculous, but I promise not to make fun of them. The other thing I was reminded of after the Twin Towers attack, right, and all that nonsense, 4 days the Merc was shut down. I was still in the pit, and I was trading S&Ps. And everybody, sell, let's go. And I walked in the first day. I said, what's the bid? I bought the dead ass low because I knew our economy rebounds always and forever. We're the innovators. We're the ones who developed not only the stock exchange, but entrepreneurial and small business anyway. So we can suffer bad times like a illegitimate Democrat in office. And we're going to thrive under good times when you have somebody who looks out for American businesses. So I'm not surprised the market rebounded today. In fact, I think it's a fraction of what it will be in 4 years. Do you feel that way?
Well, Sean, that's absolutely. And look, if we observe markets over the long haul, that's exactly what we experience, precisely what you just articulated. Yes, you have these dips, but it's largely because you have people overreacting in the exact same way that when you have big up days, oftentimes that is also due to overreactions. And this is where the little guy, the retail trader, as they say, just gets absolutely crushed because they're always trying to chase that next big, either big dip or the next big upswing. And if you're going to try to time it like that, sure, you may get it right every once in a while, but you're not going to get it right in the long run. The best thing a lot of these people can do, if they're not working with a broker who has a managed fund, if they really want to buy stuff on their own, for the most part, the best thing a lot of folks can do is buy and hold.
So one of the fascinating realities that Trump brings to the table, and that I thought, quite honestly, I'm like, I don't know. I didn't like it when he was talking about it. I did not like it when he was talking about it. But when he was talking about the tariffs and the rest of it, I said, nah. But I then again, he never finished a sentence, right? New Yorker doesn't finish the fracking sentences. It just gives you some innuendo. He wanted free trade, and it looks to be in just 13 months, which, by the way, is a month and a half shorter than the Iranians held the hostages when Jimmy Carter was president. In just 13 months, he has added a tremendous success and fix to corrupt onomics under Biden, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. That's exactly right. Now, things are getting a little murky right now. After the Supreme Court decision, granted, the president has a lot of other tariff authorities he can use. But it's been very interesting to watch market reactions to the different announcements that he's made. And also now the war in Iran is a huge curveball. I mean, there's so many unknowns here. It's difficult to do, I think, any kind of decent predictive analysis, whether that's on oil markets or even natural gas markets or other indicators. Again, there's just so many unknowns here, Sean. I will say I'm a bit nervous here. I don't want this to derail the incredible economic progress that we have made over the last year.
You ready? Because I've been watching and I got a theory. You ready? You ready? You strapped in?
Mm-hmm.
All right, loosen the ascot. Here we go. When you saw the Venezuela move first, very crucial. Very crucial. He has the Venezuela move, and what does he do? He opens that oil up, but specifically gives us a streamline, meaning America, right? To oil that had been corrupted, had been bastardized, and moron Venezuelan communists tried to pump it. So now we bring our companies in there. It makes up way more than what Iran ever brought to the world. After all, Iran, they sold half of the oil under the table because they had to fund their wars all over the place. So that piece first was crucial and essential. Simultaneously with deregulating America, and most of all, getting the self-induced Biden or Obama-Biden nonsense of green energy boondoggle out of the way. Goes down to Mexico the day before the attack and says, pump double. You guys are doing great. Now double it. And that's why I don't think it's going to get nearly as bad in oil prices as it did after Joe Biden stole the election.
Well, Sean, again, here's the big unknown. How long is this going to last? How long will it take? You know, we've essentially completely decapitated the government. So is something better going to take its place? Is something worse going to take its place? We just don't know. So it's unclear right now how long this is going to get dragged out for. Now, I will say it doesn't really hurt us too much in the short run. The primary nation that it hurts is actually China. Something like 90% of Iranian oil exports actually went to the Chinese Communist Party because they were one of the few countries that wouldn't sanction Iran. And so Iran had to sell China the oil at a massive discount to help get around the huge sanctions that were in place. So having a lot of, let me put it this way, a lot of the changes that we saw over the weekend are going to work in our favor, because right now China has been cut off from something like 10% of their total imports, and that's going to obviously cause prices to go up in China. They're going to have to source it from other places like Russia, but that is going to divert that oil from wherever it's going currently. And then it becomes a question of, well, can the other OPEC nations that are not shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, can they increase production enough to make up for the shortfall? That remains to be seen. So again, there's just so many unknowns here. I wish I could give you a better, some better predictions here, or at least more certain predictions, give you higher probabilities. But for a lot of this, all I can say is we just don't know.
Well, you are giving me probable outcomes, and I love that, because what you really described, as far as I see it, is a tremendous win-win. And that being, if China is economically knuckle-undered, now we make them act civilized and bring them to the table and bring them to the world market. The idea that we pretended their economy was legitimate all these years has been really upsetting to me. You and I talked about the benefits of favored nation status, the corruption in the trade from World Trade Organization. But now you tell me that they've been paying pennies on the dollar for oil. Welcome to the big boy table. Man up and act like a fracking government. Or we'll figure out if we put those fillings in Xi Jinping's teeth as well, and we whack that son of a dog, too. This is the other aspect. First time ever there's a man in office. That's what I like.
And it's also going to be a huge boost to the petrodollar is another thing we should point out, Sean, which is really, really going to help shore up the dollar. It's part of the reason I think why you've seen the strong performance in the dollar over the last couple of days. All of those oil transactions that previously were not being conducted in USDs now all of a sudden are going to have to be conducted that way, because, again, you're going to go from the illegitimate or under-the-table transactions that you're describing. You're going to go from that to everything being above board. You're going to go back to using the SWIFT system for conducting payments, for example. So Yes, it is. It is very likely that at some point Iranian production is going to come back up. Those transactions are going to be handled in dollars, and that's going to be a huge sponge to soak up a lot of excess liquidity that right now is, the Fed is having to soak up via reverse repos internationally right now, which is a whole other scandal. The fact that we're paying a couple $100 million a day to foreign banks, not even U.S. banks. But I digress. It certainly does help strengthen the petrodollar. I sincerely hope that wasn't part of the motivation for everything we're seeing. But you certainly do have that parallel with Iraq, where right before the Iraq invasion, they had switched off of using dollars and started using euros. Now they're going to be back on dollars.
Well, this also is an opportunity for the Iranians who were not part of that nonsense costume wearers to actually build an economy for themselves, because one thing we never have to worry about is where the Tehran exchange closes. Where'd that close today? Or the Iranian S&P 500 or their version of the NASDAQ. Do you know where that closed? It's right next to Gaza. You know where those things close? Because now we cleared the field where you want to live in a civilized world where every Iranian has the opportunity to be something he wasn't born. Then welcome to Western civilization. What do you think?
Sean, absolutely. Look, the more you can get countries interconnected via trade, the less likely they are to have the kinds of conflicts that we're seeing right now. If Iran was an integrated trading partner with everyone else in the region, the way France is with the United Kingdom and Germany and Switzerland and Spain, France is not going to be going to war with any of those countries anytime soon. I'm not trying to make a joke here about the French military, but in all sincerity, they have such integrated economies that it would be so utterly disastrous. That is its own kind of mutually assured destruction before you even start talking about something like a nuclear deterrent. In fact, historically, before you actually see nations go to war, in all the instances I've been able to find looking at history, Sean, you always find a breakdown in trade occurs first.
Well,
one of the reasons why, if we go back to World War II, one of the reasons why Winston Churchill, for example, was a little hesitant to ally with Joseph Stalin was because right before Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union was Hitler's primary trading partner. The bombs that Hitler was dropping on London, he was purchasing from Joseph Stalin. And so it was the breakdown in trading relations between the two countries that really precipitated Operation Barbarossa and the biggest really protracted battle we have ever seen, which was the Eastern Front of World War II.
So you bring up two very important things to me, and I'll tell you what that is. Number one, when Joe Biden broke off all economic exchange with Russia, when he and his government blew up Nord Stream 2, that to me was the most provocative act that I think America's ever taken against Russia. And what he tried to do was cripple them economically. And so much of all of this could have been avoided had that not been done. So much of controlling Putin could have been done because the first step after the collapse of the Iron Curtain was what? We worked on a symbiotic relationship economically with Russia. This is all a result of bad Democrat presidents, as I see it. And when you talk about France, look at what happened when France decided to go into this socialist nonsense versus prior. After all, we wouldn't be America if it wasn't for France. They used to have the same ideology we did. They had their own cancer of socialism, their own cancer of Marxism in their country. So it's really a great example to use both of those examples of why you need peace through economic enrichment of each other, economic enrichment of your citizens. That's the only way you can have any kind of peace in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, Sean, that you're absolutely right. And when it comes to Russia, this I don't know. I feel like this is such a tragic case. It was not that long ago Russia was actually asking to join NATO, and we wouldn't let them in. I mean, it's amazing how so much of what we have done with Russia, and this is not to say like Putin's a saint or anything like that, but sadly, so much of what we have done with Russia has just pushed them into the open arms of the Chinese Communist Party, a nation that they have not been allies with. There is an incredible amount of tension along their border, which is a very, very large border And Russia knows they don't have the military to keep that border safe in the case of a conflict with the Chinese Communist Party. But by keeping them out of NATO, by constantly sanctioning them and using a very heavy hand instead of trying to work with them, instead of trying to strengthen economic ties and bring them into our sphere of influence, we have simply pushed them to try to keep their own sphere of influence, to try to grow that sphere of influence as well, which is arguably what they've been trying to do in the Ukraine and what they did in Georgia, right? I mean, it's really just amazing how the whole situation, I think, with Russia has been completely mishandled. It was mishandled by Biden. It was mishandled by Obama, right? That was when they took Crimea. It wasn't under Trump, for crying out loud.
Well, the other thing, too, is Obama and Victoria Nuland, that slob of a typical Democrat female, what she did to incentivize all of this and lay the groundwork. I believe this is completely orchestrated. And if you remember, and I know you do, the people of Ukraine, the actual victims, they were like Chicagoans. They had been crying for help from outside because the government had been so corrupted it was constantly raping them and casting them into feudalism. So there's a lot of stuff that will be swept under the rug if we don't keep reminding people. But what I see Trump do is very strategic, even though nobody gives him credit for this. Look, he shut off the oil distributors to China, two of the biggest, Venezuela and now Iran. So now we can maybe negotiate through economic strategy versus war with China. And you can use that leverage to bring peace to Taiwan and all the rest of it. You might even get Hong Kong back for God knows what's happening, because the Chinese now are crippled economically. They have to talk to us, and we can make things better, and we can reestablish the relationship economically with the former Soviet Union if we forget about the trillions of dollars that are missing.
And look, Sean, one of the big problems that I think we need to that we really need to kind of grapple with right now is the fact that when you're talking about a nation like Russia versus a nation like China, there are some really important distinctions between those two economies. For example, why have all of these different sanctions been largely ineffective when it comes to Russia? It's because so much of their economy, look, it's not an economic autarky, but they are largely self-sufficient. Yeah. They are not importing raw materials. They are exporting them, okay? With China, in many instances, it's exactly the opposite. So whereas Russia has this abundance of oil and natural gas, China is starving for coal. They're starving for oil, natural gas, and not just energy. I mean, it's even foodstuffs like pork. And so you have to, I think, approach those two very, very differently, because the strategies you're going to have to use in not just negotiating, but in trying to gain leverage over them is very, very different. So like you articulated with China, you've cut off, something like a fifth of their total oil between Venezuela and Iran. I think it's a little less than a fifth. And that's a really, really important piece of leverage that you now have over them. Conversely, with a nation like Russia, if you try to cut them off, guess what? They weren't buying your oil anyway. They've been selling it. And this is one of the tragedies of the war in the Ukraine. If you look at how much Russian energy all those European nations have bought from Russia since the conflict in the Ukraine began, they have actually sent more money to Russia in the form of energy purchases than they have to the Ukraine in the form of aid, whether that's military or otherwise.
Do you know why?
Likewise, if you look at what's happening with China, right? If you look at all of the stuff, all of the frankly cheap Chinese junk that we have been buying from the CCP over the years, that is what they are using. The proceeds from that is what they are using to build up their military industrial complex, if you will, that is right now threatening places like Taiwan.
Are you ready? I'm going to give you something. I'm going to give it to you for free, no charge, next time you're on Stuart Varney or Charles Payne. And the reason for everything you just surmised, sanctions don't work, tariffs do. Now watch their heads blow off when you say that, because that's what it proves. Tariffs can be used as leverage to get to the destination of open and free trade, but a sanction never can, because it's an economic act of war. What do you think?
Well, exactly, Sean. That's such a great point. That's exactly what sanctions are. It is economic warfare. That's very, very different from a tariff saying, look, if you're going to conduct this trade or that, then we are hereby imposing a tax on it, which is really what that is, or a duty, a fee, a fine, whatever the heck you want to call it. But no, you're absolutely right. It is economic warfare. Sanctions are in peacetime the exact same thing that we do to a country in wartime when you blockade their economy and you try to stop any of that trade.
See, we could play word games with people. I love it. I think we're smarter. I think we can win. Like, for instance, in Democrat areas, I start to tell our Democrat friends when I have to go back to the Chirac area in Illinoisistan, you guys have tariffs too, only it's on citizens. You have a gas tariff, you have an energy tariff, you have a water bill tariff in Chicago, which will really knock your socks off. And then don't forget about the property tariffs. So I think we can really confuse them with their own bastardization of language. What do you say?
I love it, Sean. And if you don't mind, I'm going to start stealing that. I'm going to start saying, city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, they have their own kinds of tariff. They have a tariff on gasoline. I love it.
They tariff their constituents. EJ Antoni, I'll be watching for you. Now, what are you going to go with? You're going to go with, you know what I haven't seen you in? And I'm going to request it. I'm thinking either a forest or an emerald green. You know what I mean? You could pull it off if you put the white shirt with the crisp gold tie. Come on, you look like Goldfinger. I say you do it, kid.
You know what? All right, you talked me into it.
All right, very good. I'll be looking for you tomorrow. Thanks for making time for me tonight, however. I appreciate it. Talk to you next week.
All right, till then, Sean, thanks again.
Thank you, brother. We'll be back with your calls and comments.